Well, hi again, it's Tim, your living sky guy from the Paris of the Prairies, beautiful Saskatoon. And it has gotten quite a lot darker all of a sudden. And it's nice because we're later in July and we're getting a little bit closer to those, getting rid of the twilight a lot easier. Now, of course, the minute I start streaming, a car comes down the road. So anyways, in the time since I saw you last, I've had a chance to get some things set up. So the first thing I've gotten set up is the telescope right here. We've got the big Celestron C925 set up. And so with it going, of course, now here comes that car. We'll let them pull up here and hopefully turn their lights off. And I've got a couple of cameras set up. I don't have exactly the camera set up that I was planning on, only because I wanted to give you a little bit higher magnification on the planets, but I forgot that I needed a 48mm adapter for the video camera. So right now I'm running with a 43mm, so I'm just using prime focus on there. But still, for the moon, as you can see, we're going to get quite... Oh, let's wake her up here. Let's wake up the camera first off. And you're going to see we're going to have a substantially, there we go, definitely a brighter looking view than a lot higher magnification as well. Not as high magnification I was going to be giving you, but this is much better for the moon itself. So as you can see here, we've got that quarter moon. Now, to give you a little bit of a tour along here, this particular telescope has a focal length of 2300 millimeters. So if you put that onto a crop sensor camera, which is what my video camera is, that is in essence about a 3000 millimeter lens, just over a 3000 millimeter lens. So it's so much magnification that we're not actually getting the full moon, the full view of the moon here. Now, this particular phase of the moon, when we're looking at a quarter moon or just past a quarter moon, when the moon's in its phases, that's generally when you're going to be seeing the most interesting views of the moon. Because you've got this oblique lighting happening where the light's coming from the side. So what's happening is you're going to see that shadow area between the light and the dark of the moon. That shadow area is what's known as the Terminator. So think of that as where sunset essentially is happening in the moon right now. And you know what it's like at sunset here on Earth. When the sun is setting, we get that sort of low angle light. You get those long, long shadows. And that's exactly what's happening with the moon right now. You're getting those really long shadows. So you're seeing a lot more definition in the craters than you would normally see in something like a full moon. A full moon is probably one of the most boring moons to look at. Yes, you're seeing the moon all at once, but you're not seeing a lot of the intricacies or details of them. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that image you're looking at has got a rippling effect to it. And the rippling effect is just basically because we're shooting through the Earth's atmosphere and we're magnifying the atmosphere. And some nights are clearer than other nights. What they talk about having good seeing when you're looking through a much stiller atmosphere. Now, in the summertime, we don't always get the world's best still atmospheres because you have the heating and cooling of the Earth as the evening starts to cool off. So you see a lot of those ripples that are happening. So that's why you're seeing that sort of jumping around aspect of the moon right now. But as you can see, when we're at the, what we're looking at right now are a number of the smaller craters. When we talk about smaller craters, they're smaller in relation to some of the larger ones, but they're still, in some cases, hundreds of miles wide, or at least dozens of miles wide. That particular one crater just below center, you can see how we're seeing just part of that rim illuminated. And if you look very closely, you'll see in the center there is a bit of a high point from the impact, like basically a little mountain in the crater which is catching some of that light. The most distinctive features you're going to see in the moon are going to be craters as well as the mares or oceans. So when we talk about the oceans, let me just come over and we're just going to move over a little bit here. And whoop, let me get my directions right. Everything's backwards in the telescope here. So those larger gray areas are oceans. When the first explorers looked at the moon through a telescope, well, actually, even before telescopes, when they looked up at the moon, they saw light and dark areas. And what was happening was people were basically using the knowledge that we had. And the knowledge that we had when we were standing in the Earth is when we looked at something darker in a large expanse, it was usually water. So they assumed that that's what they were looking at in the moon, were oceans. So that's why they're called either oceans, seas, or mares, being the Latin. And we just sort of kept that tradition as things modernized on us here. So that's a little bit of a view of the moon tonight. The next spot I want to take you is to show you a planet. I'm going to show you Jupiter. If you are looking outside in your backyard right now and looking just a little bit east of south, you're going to see a really bright looking star up in that southern horizon. And that star is not a star, but it's the planet Jupiter. So I'm just going to slew the scope on over to Jupiter here. 1 second here. We're going to go here. And now the keypad, you'll notice I'm using a keypad here. And basically the keypad has the ability to basically give me very quick and easy access to about 40,000 different objects in the sky. So even if I don't know what I'm looking at, it can show me. It can send me there once I've essentially aligned the telescope. So I'm just going to take a little peek through here and make sure I've got Jupiter in the frame. Okay, and I'm just going to have to switch this over, make a little exposure adjustment so you can see a little more. And we're going to see if we can actually see through the video camera, if it has the sensitivity to be able to pick up some of those moons of Jupiter. So right now you're seeing Jupiter obviously as a bit of a globe here. I'm going to adjust the exposure a little bit to see if you can see a little bit of the cloud banding. Now tonight it is not the world's greatest seeing, once again, there's a lot of unsteadiness in the atmosphere. So we're not necessarily getting a really great view of it tonight. Now you are getting a much larger view than you would get with the naked eye, but let me just take a look here and see if I can adjust that focus just a little bit. I'm not used to focusing remotely onto a computer here. And okay, let me just crank up the exposure a little bit. Oh, other direction. We're going to see if we can overexpose enough to be able to give you a view of some of the Galilean moons. And right now, no, unfortunately the sensitivity of this video camera is not as good as it's a fairly old camera. It's about a 10-year-old camera. So it's not giving me the sensitivity that I would like. It's designed for video, it's in daytime, it's not designed for putting onto a telescope. The camera that I want to be able to use for this, my Fuji X-H1 right now is in the shop getting a little bit of work done on it, but I'm hoping that's going to give me some better results for a future broadcast. But we are giving you a bit of a view of Jupiter nonetheless. And when you look at Jupiter, that is, of course, the largest planet in the solar system. What's unique about Jupiter is it has, you've probably all heard of the Jupiter's Great Red Spot, which essentially is just a storm that's been on the surface of Jupiter for God knows how long, hundreds of years. And it's just this swirling red storm, and it increases and decreases in intensity and in size. And right now it's a lot smaller than it has been, but it is definitely on some evenings, if it's turned towards us through a telescope, visible with the naked eye. The other thing about Jupiter is it has 4 visible moons, what are known as Galilean moons. And those ones you can actually see on a clear night when you're somewhere dark with just a pair of binoculars. Some nights you'll go out and you'll only see 2, or you'll see 3, or you'll see 4, depending on where they are in their orbit around the planet itself. If they happen to be between us and Jupiter or on the backside of Jupiter, when you're looking, you might not necessarily see them to start with. But Jupiter itself has a lot more moons than just those four. It's just those four are the ones that we can visibly see. And they're called the Galilean moons because it was Galileo who discovered them with the first telescope. Now, we're going to take another little trip here, and we're going to jump on over and give you a peek at Saturn. Okay, so let's take a peek over at Saturn. Okay, I'm just going through the finder scope here. I don't have a perfect alignment right now because I just did a real quick alignment just after sunset. So if I had the time to give it a much better alignment, I would not be having to tweak it like I'm doing here. But let's just take a look and see what we got here. Hey, look at that. We have a Saturn. Okay, so let me just bring it down center. Whoop, come back here. And what's the first thing you notice about that? The first thing that you notice about that is it's not round anymore. It's sort of flat and oval shaped. And the reason it's flat and oval shaped is the rings of Saturn. Saturn just went through, on the 20th of July, went through what's known as opposition, where basically its orbit is as close to us as it's going to be for the year. And if you remember from a previous broadcast I did, we had Jupiter went in opposition on the 14th of July, and Saturn did the same thing on the 20th. So that's why we're seeing them actually all summer long. They happen to be in a beautiful spot where we see them from basically sunset to sunrise, visible in that southern sky. So the rings themselves are at a bit of a tilt. So when we talk about a bit of a tilt here, the rings are not flat. They're sort of sitting at a tilt like this. Okay, so because they're at that tilt, that's where we're seeing that sort of oval shape. You'll never see Saturn with its rings straight flat against us just because of the way its orbit is and our orbit is. But there are some times where they're not as tilted, so it's less noticeable, and sometimes where they're more of a tilt. And right now we're at the point where definitely we have that added tilt so that you're seeing that oblong shape to it. And if you look very closely, you will see there's a brighter spot in the center, which is the actual moon, it's not the moon, the planet itself. And the darker area, the slightly darker area, are the rings. And if we had higher magnification, you'd actually be able to see some separation between those. I'm just going to try making a little exposure adjustment here and see if we can make it a little more noticeable here. Not by much. Okay, yeah, and that's mainly because I just don't have as much magnification as I'd like. I wanted to, once again, hook an eyepiece up to this, and I'll be able to do that again, hopefully later this summer when when I've got my Fuji back from the shop. Sorry, Siri's trying to talk to me here. Okay, so that is Saturn. So Saturn is, once again, you'll notice they're pretty much on the same plane. When you're looking in the sky, they're almost level with each other. And partly for the reason for that is the fact that all the planets are traveling or what are known as the ecliptic. And essentially they're sort of following the same path through the sky. The solar system itself, although there is no up or down in space, contrary to any science fiction show that you've ever seen where all the ships are always going in a straight line. There's no up and down in space. But when we talk about the orbits of the planets themselves, if you look at it sort of from the side, it's kind of like a record platter where they're all very much on that same plane and traveling in that same direction. The one difference to that is the planet, I'm going to say Uranus. I'm pretty much certain it's Uranus, but someone will correct me if I'm wrong. Where its orbit itself, instead of going at this sort of orbit here, like all the other planets are doing, it's going in more of a sideways type orbit. So it sort of moves up and down a little bit more off of the ecliptic. But all the other planets will always pretty much travel on that particular plane. The other thing that's unique about the ecliptic is when you look at the constellations that are along the ecliptic, those particular constellations, there are 12 major ones, those are the constellations that are part of the zodiac symbols. Okay, so the zodiac symbols are the constellations that follow along the ecliptic. So when they talk about, you had Jupiter rising in your constellation or whatever the heck they talk about, I don't understand. I don't pretend to understand astrology. I prefer astronomy. But anyways, when they talk about, planets in a particular constellation at a certain time and that sort of stuff, in astrology, that's what they're talking about, because those planets are moving through those constellations as well. So that's the couple of things I wanted to show you right now. Well, three things, of course: the moon, show you Jupiter, show you Saturn. A little later tonight, we should have Mars rising up here. But the other thing that's happening this evening is a meteor shower. And yes, there's a meteor shower tonight. Tonight is actually the peak of the Delta Aquarids meteor shower. And when's the best time to view that? Basically from about midnight on. Now we've got the moon itself is going to be setting at probably close to 1 o'clock this morning. The moon is, got about an hour and a half maybe to go before it sets. And we want to get the moon out of the way for meteor showers, because it will have a tendency of drowning out the dimmer meteor showers. So what's the best way to view a meteor shower? Basically get somewhere where it's dark, get yourself a comfortable chair and a nice cup of coffee, and sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And where are they appearing? Well, all meteor showers are always named after the constellation that appears to be where they're radiating from. So the Delta Aquarids from the constellation Aquarius. So basically what you want to look at is look towards the eastern sky. And from midnight to sunrise is when the Earth is rotating into the debris field, and that's when you're going to have your best chance of seeing meteors. So what causes meteors? Meteors themselves are caused by rocks that are basically burning up through the Earth's atmosphere. And when they hit the Earth's atmosphere, they burn up into this nice little flash of light, the, quote, shooting star. Now, meteor showers occur when the Earth passes through a regular debris field, and it does this on an annual basis. There are about 12 really mainly prominent meteor showers that happen every year, almost like clockwork. You can pretty much, write them on your calendar every year. And what that debris field is basically a comet that has passed through the Earth's atmosphere, or I'm sorry, through the Earth's orbit, passed through our solar system, and the Earth is going through every year that debris field that was left behind, because those are just rocks that are just sort of hanging in space there. So that's why we can sort of predict when meteors are happening. Now, meteor showers are not a guarantee that we're going to get huge fireball meteors. Definitely some showers have larger debris fields than others. And the Delta Aquarids, although it's a good meteor shower, it's not one of the great meteor showers. The great one is coming up in August, which is the Perseids. That one's going to be peaking on the 12th of August. But the problem with that one is we're going to have almost a full moon, an 84% moon that particular night, hanging in the sky all throughout the night. So we're only really going to be seeing the brightest of those meteors. So that's the other things happening tonight. So we got 3 planets when Mars rises up. Closer to sunrise, we're going to see Venus rising up in the eastern sky. And we still do have a comet hanging out there. We still do have the Comet Neowise. And Neowise is, although it's pretty much gotten to the point where it's not really a naked eye comet anymore unless you got really good visions, but it can be seen with binoculars. It's still best, though, at this point captured with a camera. The shows that we had from Neowise over the last few weeks have definitely faded away, but we were so lucky to have that. There is another comet waiting in the wings, Comet Lemon. Whether it's going to put on a big show for us or not is yet to be seen. but that one's definitely getting closer to the sun and working its way. I haven't heard too much word about Lemon lately, but we'll see if that one's going to be coming up. But that's pretty much what I wanted to show you this evening. If anything spectacular happens, I may come back with a bit of a recap. But other than that, if anyone had any questions, please put them in the comments. I'd be more than happy later when I have a chance to go through the comments to answer your questions. If I don't know the answer, I will find out the answer and we'll all learn together. And that's the whole beauty of questions, is we all have a chance to answer. So before I sign off and let you go, I want to say first off, thank you to London Drugs for the use of this lovely telescope here. I'm very lucky to be able to have access to a piece like this here. Before we go as well, I'm just going to give us one last look at the moon. I'm sure it's a little more interesting than looking at my face, that's for sure. So let's just slew on over to La Luna. So while it's doing its thing, I will also say I want to thank you all very much for taking some time and spending it with me. Please think of subscribing, either following me on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter, or please subscribe to my YouTube channel, all of which are under Living Sky Guy. So just look for Living Sky Guy. Now let's just see how close I am to getting the moon in it. Look at that, holy smokes, not too shabby. I'm just going to adjust the exposure a little bit though. So we're seeing a little more detail. Okay. And as you can see, as the moon itself is getting lower in the horizon, that atmosphere is getting less and less steady. And it's definitely getting, you're seeing a lot more jumping around here. I want to show you something right along here. Right here in the very center of your screen, you see all those little bumps there? All those little bumps there are a mountain range. There's some beautiful mountain ranges as well on the moon. It has a lot of the topography that you would expect on Earth, valleys and mountains and all that sort of stuff, but it has a lot more, I guess for lack of a better term, bad complexion than we have on the Earth. The Earth does have impact craters, but because we have an atmosphere, our atmosphere repels a lot of these smaller meteors, and the moon itself, of course, does not have enough gravitational pull to be able to actually create an atmosphere. So it gets hit by anything that happens to swing by in space. So that's why it definitely has that look of, I guess, I don't know, the rented mule, I guess. The Earth space has not been too kind to it, but it does have an absolute natural beauty there because of that. So I think we've been on for a little while here. I'm going to give you a chance to enjoy your night, and please take a chance to step outside and take a look at the beauty of the night sky. Take a look at the moon. If you've got binoculars or a telescope, now's the time to get them out. Take a look at Saturn. Take a look at Jupiter. With Jupiter, even with a pair of 7x50 binoculars, you will be able to see some of those tiny little moons, which will appear as little pinpricks of light. Take a look at Saturn. You're going to see that orb look to it. It's going to be, that flattened orb look, that sort of oval look to it as well. And Mars, when it comes out later, you're going to see, oh, look at all the bugs on my screen here. It's basically going to show you the look of just a bit of a redness to it. If you're putting a telescope to it, you may even see the polar caps. But with the way the seeing is tonight and how unsteady the atmosphere, I really wouldn't hold up much hope for that. Take another look for Neowise if you want. It's going to be below the Big Dipper in the northeastern sky and northwestern sky. I always say northeastern. I keep messing that one up. Northwestern sky right now, working its way to the northeastern sky. Best to try to capture that though with the camera. It would be very difficult to see, almost impossible at this point with the naked eye. And the other thing is, yes, a meteor shower. If you're somewhere where it's dark, get outside, put on some bug spray, enjoy the beauty of those meteors, nature's fireworks. So on that happy note, I want to thank you once again for joining me, and I look forward to answering any questions you might want to leave there. tell your friends. I'll be doing this again sometime soon. So this was Random Acts of Astronomy for tonight. So take care, everyone. Keep safe. Stay apart. Don't get COVID. Don't spread it around. And clear skies, everyone.